Once I sold my business and stopped working for the company that acquired it, I struggled with a loss of identity. And that's what this video is about, and how I came to grips with that and how I walked through it. Hi there, my name's Rory McCaw. Welcome to Self-Made Strategies. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I built a tech services business, a consulting company, started in 2001 and exited in 2018 for more than 8 figures. And I'm here to share my tips and tricks with you to help you do the same, but faster, and achieve a greater level of success than I have. If that's of interest to you, I'd encourage you to hit the like and subscribe button. So once I sold my business, I continued to work for the company by choice that bought my business, primarily because I was 46, didn't really know what I would do with my time, and I had been working pretty much 12-hour days for the better part of 17 years. Now, not every day, obviously, and I worked remote, but I worked on every single family holiday that we took. I remember going to Maui every year with the family, and I would be up at 4:30, 5 a.m. Maui time, checking the markets, checking my email, checking what's going on, making sure that people had answers to their questions and that they were unblocked. Now, this was at a time where I was still working in the business and not on the business. I didn't start working on my business until, in my opinion, far too late down that path. And what that led me to have was a great deal of stress. I started drinking alcohol way more than I should have. I used to exercise for stress relief, but I reduced that. I got extremely fat, in my opinion. I mean, I put on probably 30, 40 pounds. I looked terrible. I just was not healthy. I was mentally drained and burnt out. And that was part of the reason I knew that this was time for me to get out. I just needed to let this thing go. It was like an anchor around my ankle, and I needed to divest of it while it was still worth something, and before I ended up probably running it into the ground, just based on how I was as a person. Because if you're not healthy as an entrepreneur or a founder, it's going to be reflected in your business. And it was definitely starting to get reflected in mine from my perspective, maybe not an external perspective. I don't know, you'd have to talk to somebody there. But I really struggled when I sold my business with this concept of the very simple question: so what do you do? Because I started golfing a lot. I'm an avid golfer, and you get out there 4 hours, 4.5 hours with somebody, and they always ask you, so what do you do? And I never knew the right answer, because although I was retired, I really wasn't retired, and I never knew what to say. And I still to this day sometimes struggle with that question. But what I found was there's very few people out there that, like advisors, that can help a person like me in my, call it, financial work situation. I've worked with a lot of personal coaches, life coaches, business coaches in the past. I've worked with financial planners. I still have a financial planner. I don't leverage him very often, but I do have him available, and he has a team of tax accountants and attorneys and things like that. I have a full-time accountant, well, not full-time, but I use an accountant for all of my personal and still business related type of activities and tax filings and things of that nature. But one of the things I struggled with was a loss of identity, and B, was someone to help me in my situation, because I sold for more than 8 figures, but less than $100 million. So when you have wealth of between, call it 10 million and 100 million, you're too small to have what's called a family office. A family office is something where you usually bring on a group of people, probably 3 to 6, probably costs you about $1 million to $2 million a year to run the family office, to pay these people, but they effectively look after everything for you. So they manage your finances, they manage your day-to-day bill payments. I mean, you can architect it to do whatever you want. Some even have a travel concierge on staff to manage that. I mean, you're getting up into the hundreds of millions here when you want to get your pilot and have your private jet pick you up or you want to get on your jet at a certain time. I mean, I'm not at that tier. I'm not saying I am, but there are people obviously that are, and there's private offices that are set up for that. But in my situation, and hopefully your situation now or at some point, if you have between, I'm going to say even 5 million of investable assets, not including your personal residence or real estate holdings, but money in the market or money in investments, and 100 million, you're kind of in this wasteland where every advisor will tell you they can help you because they want your assets under management. You're what they call a whale in casino terms. You're someone who has had a big exit or financial event in their life, and they want to bring your assets under management within their wealth management firm because obviously they get paid on assets under management and they're going to benefit from that. But the reality is, if you listen to all the approaches of all these folks, they're very, very similar. And then you start talking to companies like hedge funds, and you have to be an accredited investor to put money into a hedge fund, which means you typically have to be making more than $200,000 a year. Not a problem. You have to have more than more than $1 million in investable assets. Again, not a problem. But you can't put all your eggs into one basket. So now you're talking to multiple hedge funds, and you don't want to put all your money into hedge funds, but maybe a small percentage. And if you're at 10 million, 10% is $1 million, and they may have a buy-in requirement of more than $1 million. So you're kind of limited there. And then you might want to get into private equity. But again, I would encourage you not to put all your eggs into one basket. So again, similar problems, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. So what I came to the understanding of is, as I continue to look for a solution, I've just begun running my own private office. So I have my accountant, I bring in a tax advisor and a tax attorney as required. I'm actually leveraging AI extensively these days. Now, I recorded a video yesterday on how not to trust AI because, in my personal opinion, recently ChatGPT has provided some very erroneous answers, but it's not the only AI large language model that is wrong occasionally. But question what comes out of these. Maybe ask the same question to different AI models so that you can ensure that there's some consistency in the response that you're getting. And then once you've done some due diligence, you've educated yourself on what you're thinking and what you may want to do, then talk to your tax professional, because these people are probably going to be charging you by the hour. And the less amount of time you can spend with them, the better off you're going to be from a savings perspective, and the less work that they're going to have to do on your part. And you really, most cases these days, I'm really just asking for validation of an idea and whether the idea is sound and whether there are any black holes or things that I haven't considered or given thought to. So when people ask me if I'm retired, I say, well, I'm not really retired. I'm just not working actively in any business, because if you listen to some of my videos in the past, you'll know that when I sold my 2 operating companies, one of them, my Canadian business, got sold to my family trust. So I have money inside my family trust that I need to manage, and I can outsource that, but I really enjoy the management of it. So I might be a small 1% or 5% of people who enjoy that, who are entrepreneurs. A lot of entrepreneurs I've met don't really understand finances, oddly enough, and aren't that involved or educated in investing. So if that's not your forte, then definitely delegate that to someone who's knowledgeable and that you trust and that has integrity in that area. But check in quarterly and make sure that things are going the way that you expect them to go, and don't be afraid to make changes in that area if you're not getting the returns or you don't feel the trust and integrity is there. That's something that I would strongly advise you to reevaluate at least annually, if not more frequently than that. But I have a real estate company that owns my commercial property, and I have some tenants in that. So there's some leases that I have to deal with, and some tenant conversations from time to time, and maintenance issues that come up from time to time. So I'm part-time involved in that, but I mean very part-time. And then I have my holding company, and there's some investments in that I need to manage. And then there's just other parts of life. I mean, where I spend a great deal of my time is just researching things that I never had a chance to really look at when I was working, because I was so focused on building my business that I pushed off all of these other nice to have kind of ideas. And now I have the ability to look into those. I've made a couple of small private equity investments, and I've really looked at private equity investments from the perspective of, well, I've made a few mistakes, first of all. So when I first started investing in some private deals, I did them through the guidance of my financial planner. And in hindsight, that was a very bad thing to do, because he was providing guidance to me based on, I guess, research that he had done, but they didn't really align with what I was looking for. I was just looking for a good return. And in many cases, like with any startup, they're not guaranteed to succeed. So a couple of those businesses did well, a couple failed. In the end, I probably broke even, probably lost money in reality, on the couple of investments that I made there. But now I'm invested in another company, and I invested in the people. Obviously, I like what they're doing, and they have a couple of trademark products. They're growing quickly. They're not profitable last year. 2 years ago, they were profitable last year. They're starting to generate more product and manufacture these products, and they're a good set of really successful individuals who have done this before. So they've had an exit before, they're in the same industry where they've exited, they have a proven track record, and that's really what I would look for in a private equity investment there. But getting back to just kind of what I do now is I just run my own family office. I run the different businesses I have and my lifestyle like it's a business, so that I know I have a consistent income on a monthly basis. And my goal, quite honestly, is through my investments to make enough money to cover my annual costs, which I've done successfully now for almost 8 years, and never touch my capital. So my capital continues to appreciate, and I just live off of some, not even all, of the dividends and capital gains and income that are generated from that asset pool that I've built. In fact, I mean, we're doing something, my wife and I, that we're doing the opposite of what many do. We're in our mid 50s. We're, call it 8 years after an exit. And we just bought a house that's valued at twice as much as the house that we're in now. So we're upsizing into a nicer house, a larger house, even though my one son's at school, my daughter's moved out but could be moving back. But it's about just being able to enjoy life, and we're buying an asset that should appreciate over time. And it's an asset that we're not having to lock money into this. So one of the other things that I've learned, and this has to do with real estate, is I've seen a lot of people. I spend my winter down in Cabo in Mexico, and I'm there right now. And there's a lot of people I talk to down here that have bought a place. And the way that real estate works, usually in international locales, is you have to pay in cash. So places we're staying in, maybe $2-4 million US to purchase, and your money is 100% locked up. So if I had $4 million in cash US, I could buy a place down here, and then I'd have annual costs to cover, but I can't access or borrow against that asset. So to me, that would be one of the worst decisions I could make financially, is to buy a place down here, because it costs me far less than even the carrying costs would cost me on an annual basis to rent for the 4 months we're down here during the horrific gray Toronto wintry cold weather. And I can put that money to work in the market, and within usually less than a month, I'm able to pay for my whole winter expenses from the investments in the market. Maybe it takes longer than a month in some cases, but usually less than a month. So why would you ever leverage or deploy capital into something that it can't achieve a return for you? And that's one of the things that I'm trying to be very cognizant of in my retirement years is a lot of people say I'm on a fixed income. Well, I'm not on a fixed income. My income's controlled by how well I invest and the returns that I make and the structure that I put in place. But you want to be cognizant of how you could limit your returns if you deploy capital to lifestyle expenses. So I'm trying to avoid lifestyle expenses. The house, getting back to the house, and the reason why that isn't really a lifestyle expense, although it is because it's in the country I'm a resident of, which is Canada. And in Canada, you can borrow, get a mortgage or a home equity line of credit against your house. And there's this concept called the Smith maneuver, where if, let's say, my house is worth $1 million, and usually without getting into insurance and high loan premiums, high mortgage premiums, you can borrow 80% of the value. I could borrow 800,000 of the $1 million in a HELOC or a mortgage. And if I took all of that 800,000 and put it into an investment, whether it's the stock market or something else that earned a return, I can write the interest off on that. So normally in Canada, you can't write the interest off on your mortgage on your primary residence, but that's because it's being used for personal use. Once you have more money and you're borrowing against the property as an asset and taking the money that you're borrowing, you're not commingling it with personal expenses. So I'm not buying a new Porsche with part of the 800 and then throwing the remainder into the market. That would break the Smith maneuver rules. But under the CRA guidelines, if I borrow against my primary residence, I can take all of the money I borrow, put it into the stock market, try to earn, I'm trying to earn 20% a year in the market, which I've been pretty successful with. And then I can write off the interest of, say, 3.5% right now on the mortgage. So I'm up, call it 16 after all costs, and I'm now taking advantage of what's in there. So that's where I'm at right now, and that's the struggle that I've had in terms of what to do and how to manage the wealth that we've accumulated, as well as how to deal with that question of what do you do now, and come up with a short form answer. If you have a better answer for me to use, I would love to hear it. And if these are problems that you struggle with, I'd love to hear about them in the comments, and maybe we can have a personal conversation about them, or I can answer a question via the video. Good luck in growing your business if that's where you're at. And if you have sold and you've done something different to me that I could learn from, I'd love to hear from you. Thanks, and more videos to come. If you like the videos, hit the like and subscribe button.